Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of the Stay on Course podcast. Today, I'm so excited to welcome back Travis Hahler, Senior Director of Global Strategy and Transformation at Salesforce and founder of the Neurological Nomad, and author of Rethink Resistance. In our first conversation, Travis and I explored the challenges that organizations face as they adopt AI and why resistance is a natural part of the transformation. And today, we're taking that conversation further and deeper into the neuroscience behind change, leadership, and what it really takes to move people from uncertainty to action. Travis, welcome back to the Stay on Course podcast.
Thanks again for having me for a second time. I'm excited.
It's very exciting, and your book is coming out really soon. Tell us just quickly about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. Rethink Resistance, Embracing Neuroscience to Lead Transformational Change comes out on June 23rd. Might actually already be out once this podcast is actually live. But the book is really about the barriers that naturally exist within our brains that cause people to naturally resist change, and the fact that change is not a choice, but a natural reaction within people. And so it's really there to help leaders understand, how can I leverage what neuroscience tells us about what people are going to experience as they go through change to bring the right support in order to actually help them through that change and adopt these new ways of working or new behaviors, all with the field guide style where lots and lots of examples and things that people can use as they go through that journey.
I love it. I love it. And it's out now. If you're listening, it should be out today. So check it out on Amazon. Is that where people can buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll link to it in the description below too, but there'll be links to purchase.
I love it. I love it. All right. But before we get started, I ask all of my guests, what is your favorite food of the week?
Well, Julie, I feel like I gave an underwhelming response the last time, so I'm going to
Okay.
go a little bit more specific this time. I said
Good.
pasta, anything pasta last time,
Uh-huh.
and you asked about sauces. My favorite is actually a bolognese. I love a good with rabbit, not with just a regular pork, but with like a rabbit delicious,
Rabbit.
delicious.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh. No
the way
one's
it was
ever said
meant to be.
nobody's ever said that on the Stay on Course podcast. There
Oh,
are a
I
lot of people freaking out right now, Travis.
Oh my gosh, you have to go to Italy and get the original. Come
All
on.
right, all right, here we go. We're going to Italy, everyone. Let's go. All right, where do you want to start this conversation today?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways that we could start it. Maybe we just start with a little bit about the actual science in the brain that's happening as people
Yes.
experience resistance and what's really going on in there. Because it's a lot, right?
Yes. It is
I
a
love
lot.
it.
Let's start there. I want to hear about it because the other thing is we have a lot of small business owners listening to this, and when we're selling to people, we also have to realize there's a resistance and the change that happens because they're buying something new. They're buying a course, a program, whatever
Yeah.
it is they're doing, changing their lifestyle. There's a lot of resistance to that.
There is. And you know what's really interesting? You mentioned selling. I've done this my signature talk, which is the neuroscience of change. And I've done that for about 25,000 leaders over the last several years. And there's many times where I've actually been asked, have you ever done this for sales? And I was like, I haven't specifically, but it holds true, right? Like all the things that are happening, resistance is a part of that cost to change is a big part of how you position and sell something to someone. So the great thing about everything that's in the book, and what we're going to talk about here is that it's in the book position for leaders. The idea is that, leaders can help others through change. But the beautiful thing is everything that we're about to talk about throughout this entire podcast is also applicable to just you as a human and how you go through your own change and how you can better articulate what you need or figure out what you need as you go through that. It's also super applicable outside of corporate, right? It's super applicable in your daily life. It's super applicable in your family life. It's super applicable in your community life. It doesn't have to be corporate. And so the beautiful thing about change is that it is agnostic of where it's happening. So I think it's great that people can actually use this, and you said small business owners as they go through their journey of building their business. So
Yes.
let's jump right in. There are 6 barriers to change that neurologically exist within the brain. And this was what I came up with after several years of research and field testing and talking to individuals, both in academia and also in actual corporate America. And what it really boils down to is there's kind of 2 sections that I like to talk about. One is the energy that it takes to change, and the other is the threat that change poses for us as people. So if we talk about energy, it's really about routines, and that's hard coded into our basal ganglia and how we actually learn about routines, and we really do latch onto them. And when we're asked to change, we have to abandon those routines and relearn. And because we relearn, that is a hugely energy consuming part of the process of change. It takes a lot of energy to move from habit to new way of working and to hard code that. So that's really the essence of the energy portion of why it's so hard for people to change in that natural resistance. If you move over to threat, what's interesting about the threat pieces is that a lot of people are, when I talk about threat, they're like, well, I mean, how threatening is a new system? But the realities of it is if you zoom out and you think about what our brains were designed for, our brains were designed to keep us alive, right? And that's the very basics of our brain. It can do incredible things, right? Like we're having this wonderful conversation right now, but the essence of what it's there for is to keep us alive and survive. So threat is something that's very naturally ingrained in our brain. And if you think about the things that had to be in existence for our brains to feel really safe in the early days, thousands of years ago, there's a lot of things that change brings about that kind of goes against that. So if we think about exclusion being one of the key parts of threat to our brains, because we knew as early humans that being socially accepted and in a group meant greater chance of survival. And so that
Mm.
became something that our brains latched onto, that being excluded from the group probably meant you weren't going to actually be able to survive. And so change by its nature is exclusionary, right? Someone made a choice, they're asking you to adopt it. You weren't in the room. So that exclusion activates that threat process. The same with ambiguity. It activates threat because our brains don't know how to react to ambiguous situations. So it makes up the scenario that's possibly playing out and tries to create that story. There's the
Wow.
anxiety of it too. So anxiety that happens and our amygdala and our fight or flight response, and finally loss. All change is loss. And Julie, I think we've talked about this before, but it takes people a minute to sit with that all change is really loss. Positive change, negative change, all loss. So all of those are threatening to our brain.
Sounds
Those are the six
horrible.
things. It
It,
sounds horrible, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it sounds horrible. It sounds like really hard when you put it that way.
Right? It
Yes.
does. And so what's so interesting, and this is what I found over the last almost 2 decades of work, is that when leaders understand how hard it is for people to move, that empathy that it builds creates better change because they're actually able to put themselves in their people's shoes and say, this is really hard. How do I come at this with support? And how do I think through that? And it's not just Julia just doesn't want to get on board. It's really the fact that, we're in a moment where we have to get through these natural barriers. And it's a natural barrier that's stopping them. What do they need?
Yeah. Yeah. And I can imagine that this is much harder for people that are in a corporate environment because already they don't have a lot of control, right? So they go to work and they're doing their job that their boss is telling them to do, and now they're changing it. And so there really is no autonomy anyway. And now they're telling them they have to change rather than an entrepreneur that is sort of in a different mindset. They're they're risking everything every day and there's no sort of sense of like they have control, right? Because they're making and
Yeah.
paving the way a lot different because that's you choosing it. Those are people that are
Hmm.
choosing the way and they're just kind of like, hey, I'm doing this. Most entrepreneurs are a bit of a renegade, right? You have to sort of be the one that's going to like go out of the pack to be the entrepreneur
Yeah.
because it's very unsafe
It
going that
is.
way. It's extremely unsafe. So like those we're not even talking. I feel like when we're talking about change, especially within an organization, then it even gets even harder because now you're trying to like preserve what you have because if you leave that environment you're out in the wild.
You are. Well, and what's really interesting, Julie, is that I think for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, they almost have a a false sense of security in change. Because to your point, they're like, well, I'm in charge. I kind of set my own destiny. Like if I work hard enough or if I do this, I make the choices. But the world around them changes and forces them to change. And I think sometimes it's almost a bit of a false sense of security when it comes to change because they expect to have a lot more control than sometimes they do, right? Whether it's policy, whether it's macroeconomic, whatever it might be. And those are really big problems that they really have zero control over in
Right.
most cases. And so I think it actually creates some big reactions. And you hear it when I get with other entrepreneurs, you hear and talk about things like, government policy, and people get really passionate about it because I think it's something that they weren't expecting to throw a wrench into their path that they had created for
Yeah.
themselves.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, because there's so many different things, landmines and things like that, the taxes you need to pay. But I'm just thinking about the transformation that we're in right now, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to AI. I have just got a call over the weekend, another one of my friends losing their jobs. Like people are losing their jobs left and right now. And there needs to be a pivot. People are needing to pivot. And what are they going to do? What is the new
Yeah.
thing? Because basically potentially what they did their whole entire career is no longer available to them. So now they have to pivot. And I think it's just an interesting time.
It's so interesting, and the pace of that change and the pace of the transformations that are happening is so fast. I mean, we've got a handful of AI providers and models that are updating, almost it feels like weekly, right? Where all of a sudden Claude came out with a new update, and then Gemini is a new update, and then ChatGPT is a new update, and then the third parties are all updating. So it's really, really interesting. And I think that that pace of change is really something that people have a hard time keeping up with for good reason, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get through all of that natural resistance every time it changes.
Yeah. So once we kind of well, now we've heard all the different ways we can resist things. What can people do? How do they acknowledge the resistance and then change anyway?
So putting this in kind of the frame of like personally what you look at when you're actually going through change. And I use those barriers as a checklist. So when we have those reactions, we're most oftentimes not in our quote unquote logical brain, right? We're reacting, it's kind of natural. But when you take that step back, it's really important to ask some of those questions around, you know, is this just a routine that I just haven't broken through yet? And, if you think about trying to make a personal change in your life, trying to go to the gym more, that's something that takes a long time to get really ingrained and become a habit. And people don't give themselves enough grace to really make that stick. They're like, God, I've been trying to do it for a month and it just isn't sticking. It's like, well, might not be enough time to really make it your habit, right?
Yeah.
And so starting to ask those deeper questions around, okay, is this a habit that I'm just abandoning that feels not great to abandon? I just haven't gotten a chance to actually learn. Is it that I haven't had a chance to learn? I haven't had any time to spend with it. I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing with AI right now is I just really haven't had a chance to play with it. I keep getting pushed at me, but I haven't really had a chance to sit down and truly like think through it and learn about it. Is that your barrier? Is it that you just feel excluded? You're like, God, this change was made. It has nothing to do with me. It impacts me greatly. No one asked, and now I'm feeling that kind of strife with that change. Is it that you don't have the information? Is it that you're just anxious and you don't know exactly which way to go or whether or not it's safe to move forward? And I think the biggest question that people can start to ask themselves as they're going through changes is, what am I afraid to lose in this moment? And what's interesting about loss, and there's a lot of different losses in our brains, but the three that I anchor in that I find the most are a loss of competence, meaning you had great experience or knowledge of something and you're losing that. A loss of control, and that's I think our entrepreneurs who are listening, loss of control is a big one. And then our loss of relationships. And I think that's something that, Julie, as you talk about a lot, moving from the kind of corporate world to maybe becoming an entrepreneur, I think that's a huge loss that people don't give enough space for, is that loss of relationships that they have in the day to
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And that's a huge barrier, I think, for people actually taking that step into entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, is that the relationships that they feel like they're just not going to have.
Right. And it's funny that you said that because the reason why I started one of my group coaching programs were to reestablish those relationships so that people had a
Yeah.
tribe to go through the journey with. Because, at work, I had a lunch bestie. I always had a best friend at work. I always found like
Yeah.
a friend. And I always had lunch with like the same girl and we had the best time. It was fun because, you know, as as you raise your children, when you go through that, 17 years of raising your child, it's very hard to have friendships and do things with people. So when you're at work, you get to go to lunch with your friends. And so if you find a great friend, it's a great thing. And I hope my friend is listening because she knows exactly who she is. I call her friend. I go, "Hey, friend," like that. It's just like, are you ready to go to lunch? And we just kind of had this understanding that we were going to lunch because we had so much to download about like just life and work, and we had just a great time.
Yes.
But now I try to recreate some of that as accountability and support with the group that I have. And it really is important. But having said let's talk about that transition from going from corporate to entrepreneurship. It's really hard. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, you're like, okay, what do I, every single day you're thinking, like for a good year and a half, like you're still looking for a job. You have
Yeah.
this idea that you're starting this business, but in the back of your mind, you're like, well, if somebody calls me, I'll consider it, until the day when you say, okay, no, there's really no time. There's literally no time because I actually now basically recreated my job. Now I need to create a business that is sustainable and sellable. So, like, I think there's transitions that you go through. And I mean, I'm definitely on the journey right now. I'm almost 4 years into this. And I think, like, just like a couple weeks ago, I'm like, okay, no, there's no room for me to leave this now. I'm not leaving this. And
Hmm.
that grit that I had to have to do that, I don't even know what to say about it. I don't even know if I would recommend it to people. I don't know if I would do that. I don't know if I would recommend it to people. I don't know because you have to be a certain kind of person to
Yeah.
withstand the period of time where you're like walking through Walmart and you're like, should I buy that body lotion because it's like $8 and I really shouldn't. I should buy maybe not. I don't need that. You know what I mean? It's like I don't need that thing. And when you leave your corporate job, if you've reached a certain level in your corporate job, you're making a good amount of money. You're used to going shopping and being able to buy what you need. Okay. And when you go to be an entrepreneur, it's like it's a whole new game. It's a whole new
Yeah.
set of rules. It's a whole new game, and it's a big change.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, everything becomes an expenditure, right? It's not just simply balancing out, oh, the amount coming in greatly offsets the amount going out. Now it's probably the opposite as you make that transition. The amount going out probably exceeds the amount coming in. So for at least a little while, and that scarcity, and I think you bring up one of the losses that, I hadn't really talked about. It's not one of the three that I anchor in, mainly because it doesn't necessarily exist in corporate as much as it does as you make that transition, but that's the loss of security
Yeah,
that happens when you leave that corporate role and go into entrepreneurship. That's huge.
it's a
That's
risk.
huge.
It's a risk. And to me, having gone through it, it has to be and feel like a calling to you. It has to be the thing that is so important to you that if you don't do it, you will feel more pain because you didn't do it. Okay. And that's really, really key here. It's this
Yeah.
idea that if you don't try it, that when you're at the end of your life, you're going to have a regret. And I am of the persuasion that we should not live a life of regrets. Life is too short for that. But what you learn on the journey is that it works out. Like it just somehow, I mean, for me, it worked out. I'm sure it doesn't happen for everybody like that, but you need to get the right support. You need to have the right coaches around you and have the right community around you. And if you do have all of these things and you can stay on course, you can have the consistency to build this thing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what struck me when we first met, Julie, was how you talked about your dad and his stay on course, just stay on course kind of mantra, and how important that is as you're going through that journey, and neurologically how much that helps you, right? Especially when we talked about ambiguity, we talked about exclusion, we talked about that anxiety. All of those things, if you kind of anchor in that stay on course, here's my mission, here's my vision, here's my path, that helps to reduce all of that and help you continue to move through that transition, that change, and transform, truly transform what you're
Yep.
doing.
Well, it's funny we're on this kick about entrepreneurship, but I will tell you that and I've said this on so many podcasts, every Friday for almost an entire year I was quitting every Friday. And if I tell you how it felt like I was getting kicked in the shins. Like I don't know, it's like I just felt like I was getting beat up for an entire year. And every Friday, I would call my friend Teresa. I'd be like, Teresa, I'm quitting. I'm going to get over the weekend. I'm just going to look for a job. I can't do this anymore. And every Monday, I would get back up and I would do it again. And I would try. I would get back in the race, get back in, get back in. But it takes that sort of that tenacity. And for me, I am the heavyweight breadwinner of my family. So for me, it's a matter of survival. Okay. Some people don't have it as a matter of survival. I think that those are the people that might fail faster. But when you're doing this out of a survival thing, like I need to eat. Like it's a hunter gatherer thing. If you go back to our primal roots, like I'm the one that is, and I need to make sure we have shelter. I need to make sure we have clothing. I need to, and it's not just for me, it's
Yeah.
for my family too. So there's a different type of tenacity and passion that goes into that. And so I think it's that in your mindset.
Yeah, it really is. And it becomes even harder because I think we as individuals, when we have that control and it's just us, we can deal with a lot more, shall we say, pain through that process than when you have other people depending on you, right? Where you're like, in your mind, you're like, oh, I don't need the new outfit. But you're like, but I don't want my kid to not have the new outfit, right? Like, so it's that extra added pressure where you're like, okay, I could do without it, but I don't want them to have to. So now I have to work even harder because I want
Yeah.
to make sure that I have what I need to give them what they need and desire.
It,
And that makes it, I think that makes it harder. But maybe it gives you the extra fuel too.
it does. Well, and you know what it is? It's kind of like when you're doing the journey, when you're going on this journey, and liken it to the gym. You've been to the gym. Do you have a regimen that you do at the gym, or do you work out?
I would like to say for the record that yes, I go to the gym all the time. No, I don't. I don't at all.
Okay.
It's one of the habits, like even knowing everything that I know about habit building and all of
Yeah.
this stuff, it's still one of the hardest habits that I have in my life that I've constantly for decades tried to get into a great habit and routine. I can't make it work for me.
It's hard. Well, I just interviewed somebody else a few days ago, and we talked about the third day. And it's the day that, is the hardest, the third day. You do the first day, you do the second day, the third day is the day you want to quit. But what he said that was so interesting, it's not about motivation anymore. It's becoming the person who does the thing. It's becoming the person that says yes to a commitment. It's becoming the person. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Because I've been starting this new regiment where where I'm walking, and I was also just the same way as you. I I started this habit, and I have to have a friend. I have an accountability friend that I call every morning at 7 a.m. and we go for a walk for 45 minutes together. And but if she wasn't there, I wouldn't do it. So I one day got up, it was raining outside, and I wanted to go for this walk so badly. I brought the umbrella with me. Like that's how serious I am about this. I went this morning. And it takes a lot of time. And now I'm like, I went on a tangent here. I had something really important to say before I went down this tangent, but it is definitely that's what it is. Okay, so I likened it to the gym, and it's that last rep, those last two reps that you don't want to do. It's doing the hard thing. It's doing the
Yeah.
last two reps when you're tired and you don't want to do it. That's what this is. And if you can work through pain. My father used to say that too. He's like, you have to be able to work through pain in order to get to that next level. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, our even our brain doesn't want to hear that, right? Like our brain doesn't want us to do that because that's threatening, right? It's a state of threat. And that makes it even harder to adopt and actually go through that process. So yeah, absolutely not. No one wants to go through the pain, but that is growth, right? The being able to push yourself beyond your comfort is where you grow. And then that becomes your comfort, right? And then you're kind of just like you're stepping your brain up once every time where you're like, okay, well, this is where we're comfortable now. This is where we're comfortable now. This is
Yeah.
where we're comfortable now.
Yeah, so interesting. You know what? I'm just going to ask about the book, the neuroscience. Is there anything in the book about spirituality?
We don't get into spirituality in the book. I think it is something that is really interesting, though. And quite frankly, it comes up a lot more in community-based change than it does in like corporate change, oftentimes. But that's one of the reasons it's not in the book is, it's something in corporate that we explore, but it's not really anchored there.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, interesting. Because I've been just saying this for a little bit now, and I'm writing a book, and I have this new statement that says leadership is spiritual. And the
Oh.
reason why I say leadership is spiritual, because leadership is an inside game. The very beginning of leadership is an inside game, and it is about our personal growth. And so
Mm,
if you don't grow yourself inside, how are you going to lead others if you're not leading yourself first? And so that journey of personal growth is spiritual because you have to sort of face your past traumas and your childhood in a
yeah.
sense. And I don't mean to get woo woo here, but this all plays into how you handle change and the hard things. Because if you've done the
Yeah.
growth work, you can sit with change and decisions in a different way.
Well, now that I know your definition, there's a couple things that are actually in the book that I think align really nicely to that. There's a part of it where I talk a lot about even just internal self-talk and changing how we position what we're trying to do. And the example that I use is about smoking and someone trying to quit smoking. when your mindset is, I'm trying to quit smoking, I'm trying to quit smoking, it's a lot less effective than when you say, I'm becoming a non-smoker. Like that shift, and there's research around this, that shift actually helps people identify as the non-smoker rather than
Mm,
identify as a smoker who's giving it up, right?
yes.
And that makes a huge difference. And so to your point, that spirituality with the internal work that you need
Yes.
to do within leadership, I think that's a huge part, especially within the routines and the learning piece, is as you reposition that, it's not a okay, I guess I'll do this because they're making me. But it's a, what's the opportunity? How do you flip that? How do you
Right.
say, I'm doing this because it's an opportunity for me. I'm doing
Right.
this because it's a moment for me. I think, not to get back into the AI train, but I think that's the part that people are struggling with AI is they're trying to really identify, is this my moment to embrace and like up level myself and the work I can do and expand what's possible? Or is this the moment that's gonna kind of all fall apart, what I've built so
Yeah.
far?
And it goes back to the two mindsets, right? You either going to have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And when I was certified as a coach, we basically learned this in the very beginning of our coaching is that you don't coach people with fixed mindsets. Like people that are fixed are staying fixed. And if you feel that you can't help this person or they're not going to have a growth mindset, then they might not be the right coaching client for you. And
Mm,
so, as we look at leadership, we look at two types of individuals. We looked at those people that are fixed in their mindset, and you know those people. And then you look at the growth mindset people. Those are the people that are going to embrace the change, that are going to want to try it, that are going to get to that place. But I think, like, what's going to happen on this AI transformation train is that we're going to lose a lot of the fixed mindset people. They're going to have to retire and or find some other job where they're not going to really embrace any sort of change. But the change is happening. You're either going to be on the train or off of it. And so, for those of you listening, I think the answer is have a growth mindset here. You would be surprised at the amazing things it can offer.
yeah, it really is incredible what we can accomplish when we're willing to grow, willing to learn, willing to see something as an opportunity rather than a threat, and work to that point, right?
Yeah. So, what else would you like to discuss today in closing? How would you like to close out the conversation?
Oh gosh, it always feels like it flies by so much so quickly, Julie. Podcast number, no, just kidding. Maybe one
Podcast
day.
number three.
Um, no, I think the biggest thing for me, and if, for those listening, especially knowing kind of your audience and the entrepreneurs and the solopreneurs, I think it's really easy when you're building something to get to that point of feeling like you're being kicked in the shins constantly, right? It's really, really hard. And I think one, give yourself a little grace. Like it's incredible that you've taken that step, that you're building something. And don't let the people from the cheap seats, throw things at you in the ring when you're doing the work in the arena, right? Brene Brown always talks about that. But
Yes.
I think the big thing for those individuals when it comes to resisting change and transformation, everything that's happening is really that resistance isn't personal, it's protective. And I think a lot of people need to hear that when they're on their own, especially because it's okay to feel that resistance and really allow yourself to feel it. Because I think
Mm,
as especially when you're on your own and you're building something, when you feel that pull of resistance, your mindset is kind of like, I don't have time for that. We just got to push through it. We just got to do it. That doesn't actually allow you to move forward. So like don't see it as personal as a breakdown of your abilities, as a breakdown of your character. It's really just protective. Allow it to acknowledge that protection might be needed and move through that with a
mm,
little bit of empathy for yourself.
yeah.
Just give yourself a little bit of grace as you're going through that.
Yeah. And I think if you're really serious about the journey, you get involved in a community, a business community. And those business communities cost money. It's investing into your own development so that you can withstand the journey, you know? I always tell
Yeah.
people don't do it by yourself. Do not do this by yourself. And see, that's the thing. It's like just like my walks in the morning. We'll bring it back to my walks in the morning. I would not have done I would not. We started March 24th. We walk between 3 and 4 days a week and we don't miss. And it is because I have somebody to call on the phone because I know that Tiffany
Yeah.
Jones is waiting for me every morning and I can't let her down. So it's not just letting me down. I can't let her down because
Yeah.
we're doing this together and like we got each other's back. So when she falls off the wagon or I fall off, we have each other. And the thing is that did I complain since March 24th, getting out every day at 6:45 of the bed and putting my yes, I complained. I still complain. I'm going to probably complain until it's till I'm not doing it anymore. But every day do it. I feel good that I did it. I feel
Hmm.
accomplished that I've done something hard. And I think that's the thing. Stay on course. That's the podcast. That's that's the deal here. It's like you're going to get knocked down. You're going to feel like you want to quit and you're going to feel like you don't want to change, but do the thing anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. Here, here.
Travis, where can our audience find out more about you?
Absolutely. Well, connect with me on LinkedIn, my website, travishahler.com. I'll link to my link tree in the description, and that'll have all of those things. So connect with me there.
I love it. Travis, thank you so much for being a guest on the Stay on Course podcast.
Thanks for having me.